Our perception of the world is largely shaped through the mediums of fiction. Our political positions are informed by fake news, we live out our lives in the pixelated territories of video games, and we escape into the pages of a novel or the flicker of the movie screen. As we write stories, we also write the world, and in this way storytelling should be considered a critical act of design. In films, games, literature, and media, we've always imagined alternative worlds as a means to engage and understand our own world in new ways. An exploration of the geographies of fiction can offer a view back into a condition that has become so complex, ingrained, and familiar that it is almost rendered invisible. Sometimes moments, places, or cities are best understood by examining the stories we construct about them. In Fear and Wonder, we join an ensemble of directors, concept artists, video game designers, and storytellers for an expedition through an atlas of imaginary worlds, fictional cities, and speculative geographies. We will travel through an atlas of places that only exist in the thickness of the screen or the pages of a novel. Spaces without a physical footprint, but that still weigh so heavily. This is a tour through landscapes for the projection of belief and disbelief, of fear and wonder. We begin our expedition in the whirring, purring, beating streets of the imaginary city. Cities have always been placeholders in which we prototype new scenarios and emerging cultures. It is the architectural and urban manifestation of ourselves.
Going into Black Panther, Afrofuturism was probably one of the first things that I started thinking about for that world, and really trying to understand how those stories are told and how I can apply it to what I was doing. And what really grabbed me was the sort of retelling of, true stories like the transatlantic slave trade, and how the reimagining of that into a science fiction realm. There's a lot of, I think, what Black culture does in reclaiming the culture and reclaiming your own self and stating your existence in a way that is not political, that becomes in this way this fantasy realm. I bit off the country. That was the first thing that I approached. What does the country look like? What are the buildings? What are the streets? What are the stories and the history behind them? There was no real canon. There's the '68 comic, and even the archives at Marvel, there wasn't a lot of it. So it was something, we just started from scratch. And that was a big hurdle. I mean, it's huge. And then I realized that, okay, now I'm gonna have to start writing the history of this, what each group did, what each tribe, what their world was like, and who they were, and what other real tribes were they based on. And I did that by finding the tribes that we wanted to reference and influence our tribes that we have in Wakanda.
This city is not made for human at all. It presents how tough and rugged and strong people are in order to be alive in this kind of a context. Babiru is just representing my frustration and my anger of the city and our society and how much everything is made for wealthy people. Babiru is selling the dream that you're working for a better living and something, but it's not. It's fast contracts. It's wrong. All of this is wrong. It could be like kind of refuge as well, because it's also in this kind of dark corners when everything could happen, actually. This is the main point. This is the main question through Babiru. How love and hope could grow up and maybe just appear in this kind of context.
We drive on into the suburbs, behind the veil of picket fences and perfect lawns. The grass is greener and the domestic darkness descends.
In creating those costumes for The Handmaid's Tale, certainly for women, they're all very tightly controlled by the patriarchy, and I call them prison uniforms. And so everything is coded by color. It tells people your station in life and kind of the only thing you're good for. So what I'm doing in the costumes is I'm trying to control the waist so that I will always know if they're going to be pregnant or not. As a commander, I'm looking down the street and I'm able to say, that handmaid's pregnant, that one is not, that one is a gender traitor who's gay. The way to get into that headspace was to come at it as a woman designing as a man for women. And what I tried to do was think of the good that these men in power initially wanted. Let's look for the utopia that he hoped to accomplish and show the tears in it that created the dystopia. And being someone who was trying to elevate this ideology of control and dominance over a society, it all comes from fear in the end. My impetus was, how do I tell the story in a new way that is classic visually and also so modern that it feels like it could be the future or it could be very far in the past and also 3 days ago.
So in Zoo City, Johannesburg is as much a character as any of the actual protagonists or antagonists. And Zoo City is, of course, a noir, and noir spans the whole social context, from the amazing, beautiful mansions of Houghton through to the slums of Hillbrow, which of course is an echo of everything else which happens in the world. We all have poverty, we all have racism, we all have segregation and division. It's just, I think in South Africa, it's much more prevalent and something that you kind of fall over in the streets. With the start of Zoo City, I had this very strong image of a young black woman walking into the closet in a tenement slum, and she throws open the doors and there is a sloth hanging between the hangers and her dresses. And she kind of pulls it on like a backpack, and I knew immediately that it was a burden, but also the possibility of redemption. And what is this burden? What is the suffering that she is going through? What I like to do is use crazy concepts and weird fiction as a way of getting at those same issues that we want to look away from. To be able to use speculative fiction and science fiction as a distorting mirror, which somehow reflects the truth more closely in a way that we are able to look at. Having grown up under apartheid, I'm very aware of racism. I grew up in a racist state which privileged me above everyone else in society at a terrible cost. To look at kind of personal accountability, how do you live with the things that have been done to you, but also the things that you've done?
The world is, in a sense, a character, and it's, living, breathing, it's changing, and the environments, not even just in the sense of the actual construct, but even the textures, the lighting, that film noir that was, very much a part of the first film, the atmosphere and densities, the layered sense of the city, all become these things that drive the characters. And in the first film, a lot of the technology and the world around them was a bit nostalgic, and it's about evoking these memories. And I think that they were very smart in the first film, or incredibly lucky that they sort of stumbled on what I think is sort of the perfect formula of creating a dystopian future, is that you need to have those memories of something familiar, then mixed in with something abstract and new and sort of scary. And so you get this tension immediately. And what we see in the first movie is mostly in the city center. We start to see outside of that in the second movie. So there were opportunities to kind of step outside of the first movie and engage technology and developments. And in many ways, things have gone backwards. We've lost bits of memory, we've lost technologies due to what has happened between the two films. But then other things have advanced. You see the development of industrial design products and holograms and such. And it's very, I think, true to what would happen in real life. If you look at today, some people still drive around cars that are 30 years old, and other people have Teslas, so there's this bizarre mix of old and new.
The hovercar pushes through the towers, and we leave the lights behind and head beyond the edges of the city. We are travelling into the wilds, Through the countryside, small villages, digital landscapes, and desert plains, we meet the gods, beasts, and robots that call this place home. We have always made sense of the natural world through mythology and stories. We invented fictions for why the sun rose, we danced for rain, and we spilt blood on arid land.
With Westworld, we're talking about hyperbolics of a lot of things we deal with. So every time I do a play, every time I read a movie script, then it's my job to not play the ending. It's my job to separate this character and where they go from where they are now. So when that change comes, they'll be like, oh fuck, even he could change, or whatever it is. And so that's the job often of the actors, to delay this, is to bury the lead. And with Westworld, the lead is so huge that, in my opinion, Joan and Lisa are so intelligent and so good at knowing how they're going to execute their vision. To me, they gave me the greatest gift of all, and they withheld information. If William's going to play, if he's going to be in love with Dolores, why would we even offer the knowledge that that's going to go dark?
For American Gods, David and I really wanted the sets and the set dressing to have a kind of fleshiness to them. Part of it is that I'm interested in beauty, but I also comprehend the need for things that are not beautiful. And I try to design for atmosphere, meaning there's chiaroscuro, ascension and fall, or near to far axis. And I think that those things are kind of like a measurement of phenomena. And so actors imbue that atmosphere with their emotion. And that's consistent, whether it's a dark emotion or a pleasant emotion. And I think a lot about sculpture unfolding in space when I'm designing.
As we look out into the window behind us, in the distance we can see our blue dot shrinking. And as we make our final transition, we step into our spacesuits, put our goggles on and buckle up as we set a course from the desert to the distant territories beyond this earthly world. Space has always been a projection of ourselves, an escape from the dirty ground, a planet B, a utopian do-over, or a distorted mirror, a critical distance from which to reevaluate who we are today.
As what's called a world builder or production designer, I'm involved with creating that world that belief system exists in, and often I'm one of the first believers in. Sometimes there's no script. As on The Force Awakens, I was there even before the director, asking fundamental questions that ended up coming back into the script itself. If the dark side could take the light out of a star, out of the sky, that would frighten me, metaphorically and for real. You can see in the movie, that's the threat. And I think that that's the way it metaphorically tries to mirror our times, and that the process of creating, when you can face your fears, when you can internalize them, you can believe in them, but you also can work through them to find a sense of wonder. It makes you feel like there's an epiphany and a catharsis to be had. And that's been my experience for all of these years, to be able to enter into this medium as a production designer, have that be the ostensible reason that I'm there, but while doing my job, find a whole other level as a sort of visual philosopher that I hope actually conveys something that is of value, particularly in humanist values. And in these days, I think that that's actually something significant.
We journey from the city to the wilds, from world to off-world, and as the curtain falls, we ride off into the sunset, and the car barrels off the cliff, and we are all locked in a rain-drenched kiss goodbye. We journey through fiction as a way to come to terms with conditions that reality struggles to grasp, where stories of imagined lands help us to visualize other possible futures that all sit outside of the one that all too often feels inescapable. This tour is a call to arms. I hope that we all keep making stories that become vessels for critical ideas, or Trojan horses hidden within the mediums of popular culture. There be monsters off the map, but the more we imagine speculative new territories, the sites where they might dwell become smaller. We continue to chart our course through the geographies of fiction, worlds of fear and wonder that are both thrilling and scary, necessary and urgent.